I'm back. Would have been nice to do this video earlier. It really does feel like it's been a long time since my Gunvolt Chronicles 2 video, but it took 7 months for this game to show up in the mail. I wasn't doing nothing with that time, of course. I finally tried out the Galgun series, and I started with Double Piece, which I think was the right call. Not just because I think it's the only one that'll run on my computer, but someone on Twitter red-pilled me that Galgun and Gunvolt apparently share the same universe. Yeah, there's apparently a bunch of evidence that the two are linked that I knew nothing about. But there's also a scene in Gunvolt 1 where Jewel is playing Galgun, so I don't know what to believe in. Inti Creates also just released a sequel to Double Piece with Gal Guardian's Demon Purge. I played the demo, it was good, gotta play more of that. Anyway, now is Gunvolt 3's time. It did show up, and I never have to buy a limited run ever again. I will say though, it's kind of interesting that the back of the case lists all of the English voice actors specifically. As a fan of voice acting, English dubbed specifically, that's kind of cool. Looks like Sean Chiplock is playing another blonde guy with electric powers.
I'm falling!
It's been decades since the previous two Gunvolt games, because Inti Creates seems to love time skips in this series, and Battle Priestess of Shadow Yakumo, Kirin, is breaking into a Sumeragi Institute in search of a primal dragon. And hey, it's Gunvolt, whose power went out of control shortly after Gunvolt 2. Kirin seals away his primal dragon install, revealing that his existence has resulted in more adepts being turned into out-of-control primal dragons, so they work with Sumeragi to clean up their mess and form the Bureau of Dragon Saviors. Gunvolt working with Sumeragi. Whatever this feeling is, I imagine this is what Resident Evil fans felt like when Chris Redfield shows up with the Umbrella logo. Unfortunately, this comes at a price, as Gunvolt has experienced a fate worse than death, being turned into a marketable mascot. But that's only the start. Just as things are starting to quiet down around Sumeragi, a foreign country fires a bevy of missiles on them, which turn out to be the most hardcore transports for the members of ATEMS, comprised of Prince Zed, I assume after a promotion from Lord, and his harem. No, I'm not kidding, everyone around him are women. He even outright says that he specifically seeks them out. Actually, come to think of it, all the primal dragons that Kirin and Gunvolt beat before this point joined the Bureau, and they're all men working under Kirin. I know what this is.
It's a reverse harem!
Anyway, the Knights of ATEMS are after the Binding Brands, a series of swords that keep the energy of the land in check, something the Bureau of Dragon Saviors fails to prevent them from making off with. Turns out it was all done to open a seal on another creature Sumeragi has been keeping captive, the pure primal dragon, Mobius, with the power to alter destiny and steer the world to any future it so chooses. Zed's plan is to subtly influence Mobius to push the world towards an ideal world by his standards. What are those standards? What does he see wrong with the world that needs such a drastic solution? The battle awakens Mobius, who says it's Mobin time and mobs all over Gunvolt, taking him over to bring about the end, leaving Gunvolt no choice but to beg Kirin to kill him before it's too late. Oh fuck, there's another true ending, isn't there? Yes, but you can get it the first time through, so long as you know something that's not really communicated to the player. If all goes well, Kirin succeeds in sealing Mobius's power. That's when Gunvolt realizes that his vision of the apocalypse was a warning, and to prevent that fated day from arriving, he disappears from this world and reincarnates to live his life over, and the Dragon Saviors continue their job to protect the world in his memory. Alright, so I've spent the last 3 years being critical of Gunvolt stories when the Chronicles subseries failed to live up to the standards of the first two mainline games, so I didn't want to stay in this negativity. Here's the stuff about the story I liked. The in-level dialogue is back, and with English voices, I was actually able to process what they said. It really adds a lot to the world, and it doesn't have to cover important parts of the screen. Speaking of the world is expanded now, with Shadow Yakumo, the Primal Dragons, ATEMS, and another country, the lore feels a little bigger now. And I really enjoy that all the bosses are characters with a purpose beyond just being bosses, giving them all something else to do and more time to get to know them. I guess they're really looking forward, because I can tell you right now, they weren't looking backwards. What did I say in the Gunvolt 2 video? If they build it into something later, fine, but you gotta at least assure me at the start that you have a plan instead of just blindly leaving breadcrumbs. Yeah, my skepticism was earned. Gunvolt 2 left several plot threads hanging. Why Quinn could see Jewel, what Copen is going to do now, how Middle will live her life with the Muse. I didn't mention this in the Gunvolt 2 video, but that game also had a secret ending that showed Zhao was working behind the scenes, planning to transplant the Muse Septima into someone of his choosing. None of that is addressed. Okay, the last one is in a joke ending, which, I don't know, is this canon? Maybe it is. Maybe this will be the next spin-off. This leads into my biggest problem. Gunvolt feels superfluous in his own game. He sets off the plot with his sudden primal dragon powers that have no basis in prior games, and he's part of the climax, but aside from that, he doesn't feel like he needs to be here. Same with Lumen. Yeah, Lumen's here, but it's not the same Lumen as before, and Gunvolt doesn't seem to have any particular feelings about her. Their connection used to be his primary motivation, but I guess when he let her go at the end of the second game, he didn't replace it with anything interesting. Yes, I am saying I found Kieran uninteresting as a protagonist. And the part that bothers me the most is that it's not that hard of a fix. Have this be a spin-off solely focused on Kieran, and the twist at the end is that Mobius is actually Gunvolt, and then he can join in for a real Gunvolt 3 that continues the story. And you know, we can fix a second thing too. They make a deal that one of the Atems members has a Septima a lot like Lumen, which should be a big deal considering that Lumen's power was crucial to the villain's plot in 2 games already, but then they just kind of forget that it should matter. Just say that Layla was the girl Zhao gave it to. There's also this theming, I'm not even sure it's intentional, about how things aren't always as evil as they seem. Kieran makes a point that Sumeragi is so big, they basically prop up the country and have done a lot for the people, specifically bringing up that they completely eradicated fossil fuels thanks to the power Gunvolt was radiating while in captivity. I guess that's supposed to lead us to the idea that maybe Zed isn't a villain either, but in both cases they don't show us enough of their good sides to make that point clear. I get that the first game was told from Gunvolt's perspective, it would naturally be biased, but like, Sumeragi really did do some horrible shit, but I guess time heals all wounds. It's like Metroid fans suddenly having to accept the villainous organization actually only had a small faction that was bad.
I've looked into it. Every Gunvolt game was written by Toshiaki Tai, though 2 and 3 had different additional writers, so maybe that explains it. I'm left wondering if Gunvolt 1 and 2 were just flukes, because seriously, those games succeeded where it counted and left an emotional impact. At least on me. At the very least, the impact of me having to judge all future games by that standard. Man, if you're gonna rob me of a gripping storyline, this better be the best game I ever played.
You got lucky.
Kieran is no Gunvolt, let's get that out of the way. And I'd forgive you for being let down on first impressions, because she starts off incredibly limited. She has a sword with a 3-hit combo that's also not very strong. The only thing she's got is the ability to throw talismans that stack damage. Basically, if she throws enough, the next hit will immediately kill. Still, it just feels slow and awkward. But that all changes when she gets Gunvolt by her side, as that's when she gets a new ability, Arc Chain. Tag an enemy, do an Arc Chain, and Kieran immediately teleports to them to attack. Tag multiple enemies, it's all done in one slash. The damage stacking with talismans still applies, and she gets an extra jump after it's done. That's Kieran's meta, keeping in the air for as long as she can. Since she can angle her shots upwards or downwards, it's not hard even when the majority of enemies are on the ground. The angles are a little weird though, and I would sort of like an aim assist to be a little more precise. It leads to a combo mentality more like Copen, that it's about keeping a running combo going instead of handling individual threats optimally, and since he's not playable in the main series anymore, it makes sense to replace him with something similar. And yeah, you can get some serious airtime with Kirin if you're accurate and willing to jump headlong into the unknown, and it's pretty exhilarating to have a good run and rack up kudos. But kudos has always been an easy come, easy go mechanic, right? Get hit a few times, die, or cross a checkpoint, and it's all gone, so you better play perfect. Well, Gunvolt 3 has made a few quality of life updates. Taking damage, no matter how many times, will not reset kudos. Neither will touching a checkpoint, so you can breathe easy at being allowed to use a checkpoint because that's something we couldn't say before now in this damn series. A lot of J-pop will be heard. Instead, they've overhauled the punishment with this kudos lock system. Do something poorly and a negative penalty is applied to the bonus, which must be earned back before scoring resumes from where it left off. The worse you do, the more it snowballs. I really like this change because it's no longer about playing perfectly, but mastering the skills at your disposal for those multipliers. Who cares if I'm taking some damage when I'm still staying airborne and multi-killing like a pro? And it's something that only gets better with the more bosses killed. Kirin doesn't get powers from each boss, but new moves added to her regular arsenal. Most are pretty useless, but that aerial upward slash is something else. Once you have that, you can start doing some pretty silly shit. It's not the only extra method of attack either. Every stage has these image chips hidden in their nooks and crannies, and collecting them results in random image pulses being earned at the end of the stage. Oh fuck, even Gunvolt isn't safe from gacha mechanics. Yeah, I would have preferred if set image pulses were found in set locations, like Cyber Elves in Mega Man Zero. Some of them are just passive upgrades, while others are calling existing characters from across the series for an attack. One attack that might miss, and it doesn't deal much damage. They say the image pulses attacks can hit elemental weaknesses, but I guess I guessed wrong with the ones I equipped because I never saw it. I think the more general idea is to use them to hit at unusual angles, but Kirin is so mobile that doesn't happen often. I just didn't get much use out of these ones. Honestly, Kirin is just really well suited to the game she's in, except for the bosses. She's just not strong enough to fight them efficiently. But that's what Gunvolt is for. Yep, instead of being a separate campaign, you can switch to Gunvolt at any time, and he is cracked. He's pretty much always in awakened mode, meaning infinite electricity and infinite jumps, but that's not the end of it. He's also gained Kirin's aimed shots and arc chain, so you don't have to give up what the levels were designed around. He's got Copen's dash into an enemy to lock on shtick, and he's picked up this new suplex that's really fucking strong. The one thing that's really weird is that his flash field is reversed from how it used to be, in that now it's active when he's doing nothing and disabled while attacking. There is a catch, of course. Because his power is so out of control, he has a limited time he can be active, at which point Kirin will jump back in. That's what this fetters gauge is for. Gunvolt can only be switched to when it's above 100%, it drains constantly, and when it hits 0, back to Kirin. It'll even drop to 0 if the player switches to Kirin of their own volition. Sure, his abilities can break platforming challenges into dust, but he's so limited use and Kirin is already good at the stages, I recommend saving Gunvolt for the bosses because he's so damn powerful, he can wipe the floor with them without worrying about the timer and cover Kirin's one shortcoming. But that brings us to the one issue I have with the gameplay. It's really easy. Now, I don't have anything against an easy game, I much prefer that to a hard one. This specific case only bothers me because it's the same problem Copen had in Gunvolt 2. Provasion is too good. They've done a little bit of work that it takes talismans to use, which she wants a bunch available to use at all times in attacking, so keeping them up is helpful, but they're still so easy to refill and Provasion is so automatic and thoughtless. A lot of the combat is mindless, because who cares if you just get in danger's face? You'll never take serious damage and there's no threat. Once you beat the game, you do unlock a hard mode, but it's only for that file, so I don't know if I can recommend it. There is one more thing unlocked upon game completion, that's epilogue attempts. This was added post-launch, and it's a bit more stuff focusing on the Knights of Attempts. Story-wise, not much happens, basically just everyone discovering remnants of Gunvolt. There's also not much to see from the added game time because it's all stages that we've already played. There is one new boss at the end though, it's Virgil. I will say though I'm not seeing anything new or really important, it is nice to get more time with the characters. I said before that all the bosses had something more to them than just being bosses, and giving them all this conversation reinforces that. Maybe it doesn't sound like much, but this dialogue really endeared me to Prado in particular.
These rough seas won't be kind to anyone who falls into them. Expect to return from that.
All you need to do is not fall! That's advice I could have done with earlier!
He already did, huh?
You've already been seeing it, the big draw of epilogue attempts is playable Zed. I didn't have a chance to mention this earlier, but he has a silent Omega in his name, and being an Inti Creates game, that was enough for me to peg him as the villain. He's pretty much a clone of Kieran with the same abilities. Pervasion takes his entire ammo stock and requires immediate attention after any hit. He can't stack damage, so most enemies will need more than one real hit to bring down. He still doesn't deal much damage, and his ranged attacks are also pretty pitiful. Sounds like a waste? Nope, because Zed has a couple tricks up his sleeve. He can use his feathers to jump up to 4 times. Those feathers are refilled completely after an arc chain. He has the ability to upward slash from the start, and he can attack enemies below without locking on with an aerial attack that doesn't bring him to the ground. Put all that together, his combo game is insane. It is so easy to stay in the air and keep racking up kills for an incredibly long time, far more effectively than Kieran ever could. When it comes to bosses, he sucks because he doesn't even have a Gunvolt to rely on. But stage traversal fighting standard enemies? Zed's the best character this series has ever had. He's just so damn good! And that's the situation we find ourselves in. A stage is both the stage itself and the boss. They are of similar importance and must be taken as a whole, no matter the inequity between the two. One is the absolute greatest the series has ever had, and the other is middling. In a similar vein, Azure Striker Gunvolt 3 has the best gameplay ever put into a Gunvolt game, introducing a great new flow and smoothing over the annoyances of prior games, but the story is lackluster. I wouldn't call it down to Gunvolt Chronicles level, being that there's more here and it feels more connected to the series' legacy, if only slightly, but it's far from the high bar set by the originals.
So, where does that leave us? As a consistent package, Gunvolt 2 remains the top of the totem pole for having great gameplay and a compelling storyline. But it was always a game with flaws. The route to the true ending, punishing scoring system, high skill gates, and you know what? The equipment crafting was also pretty useless. The quality of life improvements here are great. I love Kudos Lock, passive image pulses just being get them, pay to upgrade them if you want, and you're done. And not having to do a bunch of stuff to get the true ending. Even if you have to replay the final stage is just the final boss, so it's not even hard to do. I remember in my Gunvolt Chronicles 2 video, I expressed skepticism about Gunvolt 3, felt my faith in the name waning, but it's back now. Let's get a Gunvolt 4. Give me a good storyline, a couple little flaws, and we got ourselves a masterpiece here. Even if it's another 6-year wait, I'll keep playing whatever Inti Creates puts out.